Welcome to Mix Understood, where we talk about identity, the meaning of the word race, and explore the multicultural and multiracial experience through personal stories, candid conversations, and expert insights. I'm your host, Hada Lee. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. To those who are new here, we usually have a guest, we do an interview, but today it's just going to be you and me, and it's going to be a real short episode. I'm going to be featuring the remarkable story of Gonzalo Guerrero and Zazil Ha. Gonzalo was a Spanish sailor, and he was one of the earliest Europeans to fully integrate into indigenous society. And Zazil Ha was a Mayan princess who married Gonzalo, and together they started a family, becoming one of the earliest origins of Mestizos in Latin America. A mestizo, to those of you who haven't heard the term, is what they refer to in Latin America as someone of mixed race, especially one of having Spanish and indigenous descent. So, just like we did in season 1 with, we did 2 episodes going back in time and introducing stories of mixed actors from the golden era. I thought it would be fun to feature some famous mixed couples from history in season 2. So I'll be sprinkling these couple episodes throughout the season. This is the first one. So for today's story, I personally haven't heard anything about them before prepping for this episode. I've gathered whatever info I could find on the couple from the internet and tried cross-referencing and all these things. I'll definitely post the references in the show notes. Unfortunately, I couldn't find as much information about Zazil Ha, the Mayan princess, as I did about Gonzalo. Before we dive into the episode, it's important to say that Mix Understood is a space where stories, ideas, and research are shared for your consideration, and I encourage you to form your own opinions in light of your own knowledge and experience. For today specifically, just know I am most definitely not an expert on this topic. I'm just sharing what I've learned online. My hope is to explore, learn, and grow together with you. I don't claim to have all the answers. My aim is to start conversations around these topics. So let's go all the way back to the early 1500s. Imagine the tropical Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, lush with life and rich with the vibrant culture of the Maya. So to give you a picture of the world back then, I'm sure a lot of you know this already, it was a time of remarkable exploration and conquest. I mean, European powers, especially Spain and Portugal, were racing to explore and colonize the New World, driven by the promises of wealth, new trade routes, and, of course, spreading Christianity. The Maya civilization was actually one of the most advanced societies in the Americas before European contact, so a few hundred years before this story takes place. So they were definitely not in their peak by the early 1500s, but still the Maya continued to be an incredibly sophisticated society. They had deep knowledge of astronomy, a detailed calendar system, an impressive architecture, and a rich cultural life. Have you been to Mexico? I am dying to go to Mexico. I've always wanted to go visit one of those Mayan ruins. It just seems so, I don't know, out of this world. I guess with all the stories with the aliens and all that, it's an extra curious place to go visit. Anyway, back to our sailor Guerrero. So unfortunately, little is known about Gonzalo Guerrero's early life, but what we do know is he was born in Palos de la Frontera, Spain, and that place is actually also most famous for being the place from where Columbus set sail in 1942, eventually reaching America. So around the late 15th or early 16th century, like many of his contemporaries, Gonzalo sets out on this adventure. He's, has the allure of uncharted territories or maybe the directives of the Spanish crown to claim new lands. Anyway, he goes out. And so in 1511, this is where everything starts to get a little bit crazy. Guerrero and 15 other sailors are shipwrecked in the shallows off the coast of Jamaica due to a fierce tropical storm. So now this group of people are completely stranded. They made it. They're alive. They end up building a makeshift raft and they drift in the open sea for 13 days. Somehow they stay alive. I can't even imagine. I don't know about you guys, but this sounds like my worst nightmare. I learned how to swim late in life, I think when I was 12, and I get motion sickness really quickly. I once went on a short 10-day cruise and it took me forever to feel like I was normal again and that the room wasn't moving all around me. Anyway, these guys managed to survive the shipwreck, and then they build this makeshift raft, and most of them survive. A few people die over the course of those 13 days. But by the time they reach the Yucatan Peninsula, I think there's only about 10 survivors, including Guerrero. So you'd think this was already like a really awful experience. They've nearly died twice, but everything's about to get much worse. Immediately upon landing, they're caught by Mayan militia. Now, imagine I don't know, but I'm imagining that the Mayans and these Spaniards, the Mayans have probably seen very few Spaniards, if any, and vice versa. Anyway, the Mayans take in these exhausted, barely alive Spaniards, and they take a bunch of them and they ritually sacrifice them. Now, some sources say that the sacrificed people were also eaten afterwards. There's like a whole thing about like cannibalism. I didn't get too deep into that, but other sources say that then the few that they didn't sacrifice, they put in cages. Anyway, Guerrero again makes the cut and he survives that part. So one by one, the surviving Spanish slaves die, and eventually there were only two left. One of them is Gonzalo Guerrero, and the other one is Geronimo de Aguilar, who was a priest. According to some sources, the two men actually managed to escape and make their way through a jungle, traveling southward, but eventually they get captured again by another Mayan tribe. And both men now are sent to different places and have different stories of how they assimilated into the culture of their captors. They both learned the Mayan language, but Geronimo held on to his Catholic identity and his vows as a priest, while Gonzalo completely submerged himself into the Mayan culture. And one would say it was definitely survival instincts, like that's what he had to do. But listen further to this story and we will see if it truly was a survival skill or it was a strategic attempt on his part, or was it truly him allowing his life to completely transform and take on a completely new way of living. So at one point, Gonzalo is given to a powerful Mayan chief called Nachan Khan, who is the father of Zazil Ha, the Mayan princess, who will soon be coming into this picture. But Nachan Khan ends up gifting Gonzalo to his Nakom Balam, chief of warriors. And I'm telling you this because this is when Gonzalo earns his freedom, because one day while crossing a river, Balam is attacked by an alligator, and then Guerrero saves his master's life by tackling the alligator, killing it, and basically earning his freedom from that moment on. So during this whole time leading up to Gonzalo's freedom, he is proving himself to be a valuable asset, that he's intelligent, he's skilled, he's teaching the Mayans military strategies, he's climbing the ranks slowly, and he's also fully assimilating into the Mayan cultures and traditions. He's allowing himself to get tattooed and pierced, and he's changing his clothing as he's climbing the different social ranks. And he also eventually marries the Mayan princess, Nachan Khan's daughter. So this is a really big deal. I mean, if Nachan Khan let him marry his daughter, someone who was a prominent leader, that means Gonzalo must have made a very, very strong impression and was convincing that he was completely devoted and committed to the Mayan culture. They actually end up having 3 kids, a daughter and 2 boys. And apparently the firstborn daughter was sacrificed to put an end to a plague of locusts. So I guess part of the culture was that you made sacrifices to appease the gods or to try to make your life better. And yeah, there's no evidence that this happened. Like, there's no proof, but it's definitely in some of the sources I read. Also, they say that he allowed his children to have their foreheads flattened. So that was also sort of one of the rituals that they had. And so he was full on. So this was a time when the European powers, led by Spain, were beginning to really get aggressive with their exploration and colonization of the New World. And indigenous cultures like the Maya were facing an unprecedented threat to their existence. And so that's where Gonzalo's role was really a key role, because he was in a unique position where he understood both European and the Mayan ways of life, and he was an asset to give the Mayans military strategies in order to oppose the Spaniards. He actually ended up going to war against the Spaniards with the Mayans and dying in battle. But before that, before all that happens, in 1915, Hernan Cortes, which was a Spanish conquistador, discovered that Gonzales and the priest are alive. So he finds a way to track him down and basically sends him the message, we can save you, we can get you out of here, we can get you home. And this was Gonzalo's opportunity to save himself and go back to his original life. But instead, he answered, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm married, I have 3 kids, I'm a captain here now, people respect me. I'm completely tattooed. My ears are pierced. What are the Spaniards going to say if they saw me like this? So I think this is an interesting situation that he found himself in, because there's that point when you submerge yourself in a new culture where there's kind of like that point of no return where you've changed so much that you just can't go back to who you were. So obviously, yes, there were probably some safety reasons that he was concerned about, maybe about going back to his original culture. But, some of the rituals that he partook in were really intense. It was like being reborn again, was what I was reading online. It was like they would do different types of circumcisions or mutilations, scarring, bloodletting, and all of this were sort of ways of letting go of one's old self, letting that old self die, and having a resurrection into a new sacred self. So this was like hardcore rituals that he went through to transform into this new person that was a part of these people. I'm really bummed that I wasn't able to find more information about our wonderful princess and the role that she played in this pivotal moment in time. But I did read in some areas that she did actually join in some of the battles. She became a warrior as well. And that her name means transparency of spirit, clarity. Anyway, Gonzalo says, no, I am not going back. I'm staying here with my wife and kids and life that I have built here. This is my life now. So here was this European sailor that had not only become deeply integrated into indigenous culture, but had then turned around and fought to protect it, rejecting his free pass to go home. And I was thinking, this man had a life before he set sail. Again, there's no really information about his earlier life, but he would have been old enough to have been already married with kids, to have had a family. People married young back then. And when he made that decision that he wasn't going to leave, I just wonder what was going on in his mind, if he ever thought about his family and his friends and the people that he knew back home in his old life, and that he was never, ever, ever, ever going to see them again. And if that was something that he was okay with, or if that was something that he struggled with, what was that? What is it like to completely start a new life, being a new person with everything new around you, everything, the food, the people, the environment? It's wild. Anyway, I just wanted to share this intercultural love story with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, for those of you who haven't heard about it. The story of Gonzalo has this evolving narrative, some looking at him as like a traitor and another one as a cultural hero. And there's all these different gaps and contradictions in what he symbolizes. But in modern Mexico, he represents the Mestizo heritage, the blending of indigenous and European backgrounds, him together with Princess Zazil Ha. And man, this man had more than 9 lives. I just cannot imagine going through so many near-death experiences and wow, what a wild, wild, wild life to live. It's hard to believe that it actually happened, but it did. So next week, we have Dr. Jen coming onto the podcast, and we're going to be talking about raising mixed kids. She's a therapist for families that have mixed kids or for mixed couples. And we're also going to have Amy in the picture. This is a episode we recorded before Amy left, so I'm excited to share that with you. I'm going to be putting that all together this week. If you enjoyed this and you want to hear more intercultural and interracial love stories from history, send us a message, give us a thumbs up. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends and your family. Please follow, subscribe, come over to our Instagram page and say hello. I'm very active there. And see you next week. All right. Bye. This episode was produced by me, music by Matthias Kunzli.